what I do in my daytime life to support my political addiction. So in 1976, I ran the Carter-Mondale campaign in Rhode Island. I was a state director. So this has been going on a long time. And in 1976, it was the first year women were allowed to be state directors in presidential campaigns. So I started on the national level, worked in the White House, ran the education transition for President Clinton. I moderated a debate for presidential candidates on women's issues. I moderated the debate when John Silber ran for governor. Now I'm moderating a debate for the city council. Not quite sure what's next after this, but I love politics and public policy. I started my life as a civil rights lawyer, suing fire and police departments for race discrimination. So my life has been about access and equity, and so I'm thrilled to be here tonight, and love Boston, and believe in this city, and believe that this city should be a city on the hill that others can admire for all the things we can do, because there's no reason that we should not be. As some of you saw, I served on the Boston School Committee, now serve on the Mass Board of Education, and it's one of the things I care most about. So first, let me thank our sponsors: the Fenway Civic Association, Mass Vote, Fenway CDC, Greater Boston Young Democrats, the Boston Ward 5 Democratic Committee, Boston Ward 4 Democratic Committee, and our media sponsor, the Boston Guardian. I want to thank all of them, and especially Berklee College of Music. Thank you so much for allowing us to use your facility. So can we say thank you to all of you? So I want to tell you about the format and what you can expect. Those of you who have... Yeah, I know John's here, but I wasn't going to introduce him because, you know. Anyway, John Santiago. John Santiago is here. Are you here, John? Okay.
And the current counselor.
Is Josh, are you here? Josh Sakem, our retiring city councilor. And John Santiago, our newest representative from this district, and you're pointing to someone else.
Michelle Will.
Oh, Michelle Will. Three of my very favorite people. So thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. So the format for the evening. This is a forum, not really debate. It's hard to debate with 6 people. And we're going to ask the candidates to introduce themselves. They have a minute and a half, so they can tell their bio. They can tell why they're running for office, whatever they would like to do. We're then going to have a discussion that I'm going to lead. They have a minute and a half to answer a question. They could have, if they feel the need, to have a 30-minute rebuttal, 30-second rebuttal, 30-second rebuttal about something someone says. We are not going to be a place where everybody answers every question. There are also some questions that are tailored to a particular candidate because of their own experience or because of something they have on their platform. So that is going to happen too. We are then going to have a lightning round where literally they should be one-word answers. Either yes, no, or I don't have a clue. So, and then we're going to ask you, if you would like, to fill out a card and turn them in by 7:30. If you have a question that you would like to be asked. So either you fill one out, but you should turn them in to the end of the row. Somebody will pick them up by 7:30. John or Carol are going to pick them up by 7:30 in that box.
John, the one that I used to write a note. You guys pick up the one that I used as a note a second ago?
I don't know.
I'll get it later.
Pick them up by 7:30, and we will get an opportunity to ask some questions that you would like to, that have not been asked, you think. And then the candidates will have a final 1 minute for the last word here. So that's the format. There will be literature in the back of the room. If anyone is interested, the candidates have literature in the back of the room. And that's it for now. So I also have asked Diane from Ward 5 has graciously randomized the names and questions. Okay, so I'm going to randomly ask people questions. I don't know what she did, put them in some machine and they came out randomized. So here we are. So as I ask questions, even as we start, we're going to randomize people to speak. The candidates are sitting in alphabetical order now, but we're going to start with Montez to a minute and a half to tell us about yourself and why you're running. We're going to start with Montez.
Thank you very much. My name is Montez Haywood, and who am I? I've been a prosecutor now for the past 13 and a half years. Over that time frame, I've been focusing for the past 5 years on homicide and serious bodily injury cases. During that time frame, I've really prosecuted everything from simple assaults, domestic violence, property crimes, and all the way up to first-degree murder. During that time frame, I've taken serious time in investing in our community. I was a board member of Project Right. I was a treasurer there. In addition to being a board member of Project Right, I have, for the past several years, been actively engaging in feeding the homeless in our community, doing my best to ensure food security in our city. Why am I running? I'm running because I love this city. I came to this place in 2001 and have fallen in love. This place is amazing. We are that diamond on the hill. We are that place, but we need to be that place for everyone. Part of my platform is essentially to call and to start building neighborhood schools. Why? I am looking for and want to build a place that we can walk our kids to school. I want to build a place that's safe for all of us. And I want to make sure that every single member of our city loves our place. Thank you.
Amen.
Hi, my name is Helene Vincent. It's awfully hard to pronounce, so just remember the letters L and N is probably the best way to get you there. My lovely wife Alice Lynn and I live over in Kenmore Square in Fenway. I'm also the daughter of first-generation immigrants. Mom and dad are in the audience as well. I am experienced in conflict resolution and negotiation, and I am also the former president of the Boston Rotary Club and the product of public schools. I was compelled to run for public office, which I never in a million years thought that I was going to do, after spending countless evenings in evenings and meetings between high-power developers coming in to take advantage of our population boom and neighbors who we were all fighting together to retain the character and diversity of our neighborhoods. And what I saw was a gross power imbalance. And the first thing you learn in negotiation or mediation is it's not a real discussion when you've got a power imbalance like that. And I wanted to bring power back to our neighborhoods. And so I've been campaigning since last July, and I spent the last year wearing out 3 pairs of shoes to have conversations with neighbors. And I heard that power disparity, it's not just between developers and neighbors, it's across our city in all different realms. As our city grows exponentially, that disparity in wealth and power is only going to continue to grow. And so that's why I'm running for city council, because it's the closest you can come to being an elected organizer. And we need somebody who will show up in the neighborhoods to listen first, understand what matters, and then bring the information, access, and resources back to the neighborhood so we can actually have some parity of negotiation and make our community one that we really want to live in. Thank you very much.
Check. All right. Thank you, Ward 4 and 5, for having this event. So 10 years ago, I got on a plane as the first member of my family to go to a new state for college. Now, being from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, my mother, a public school teacher for 20 years, my father, a small business owner, taught me that the only way to solve problems is to actually roll up your sleeve and understand those problems, not by just only reading from other sources, but actually talking to the people that are experiencing the problems every day. Now, gathering information and turning that information from people, data, etc., into actionable and real results is how I built a very successful career here in the entrepreneur community. Problems that I want to address day one is our streets, sidewalks, homes, and accessibility with real data. A 311 request should be tracked, managed, and reported back to the person that actually logged it, not left unaddressed for months and in some cases years. For citywide policies, we need to think bigger, more innovatively. Problems with our increasing gap in affordable housing, public education, and public safety cannot be addressed by the status quo. When a city is slow to move on these items or only thinks for the short term, it's the people that are most affected by this that are typically left behind. I'm ready to change that, and I'm excited to earn the support of District 8 and show them how a working voice can get things done at City Hall. Thank you.
Your name?
Langdon, Lemoine. I think Margaret's microphone was out when she said it.
No, that's right. People were clapping. Kenzie Bach.
Thank you, Margaret, and all the organizers. I'm Kenzie Bach, and I'm running to be your city councilor for District 8. I'm running because I'm a city kid who grew up with the public parks as my yard, the public library as my playroom, and the Charles River as my swimming pool whenever I fell off the boat at community boating. And I know firsthand how great urban neighborhoods can be places for people from all walks of life and all stages of life to thrive. But I learned from my family and my neighbors that every corner of that city is made and maintained by people like the folks in this room. And you need a city councilor in your corner who's going to be effective and focused and just a consistent advocate for you in terms of the critical resources that we need and standing up for our neighborhoods. I was one of the people who organized the Community Preservation Act campaign, which has secured funding for restoring the Vilna Shul, designing a real park at Charlesgate, and building affordable artist housing in Mission Hill. To me, that's an example of how we get results-oriented things done. I'm a results-oriented person. I want to see us keep families in our neighborhoods with access to great schools, keep seniors like my grandmother aging in place, and we need a working transportation system that lets us get where we need to go safely and reliably and confronts the looming crisis of climate change. Finally, we need housing that people at all income levels can afford, which is what I've dedicated my career to for the last few years at the Boston Housing Authority and working on affordable home ownership with MAHA. So thank you, and I hope to earn your vote.
Jennifer.
What time of year? I think I'm the shrimp here, hence the heels. My name is Jennifer Nassour. Thank you very much for having me here. To the organizers and to President McKenna, thank you so much. I know to a lot of you, this is your first experience seeing a real Republican. I don't have horns and I don't have a tail. I am a mom in this community, raising my family. I've been in Boston since 2000. I've lived in the North End, I've lived in Charlestown, and I've lived in Back Bay now for 8 years. I'm raising my kids. They're 7, 12, and 15, and I'm fortunate enough to have my 12-year-old who I was able to guilt enough to come here with me this evening. And what's important to me is I think what's important to all of us, right? It's our safe streets, it's our excellent schools, it's having community schools, it's keeping our middle class in the city, it's keeping our families in the city. In the 70s, we saw people move out of here, and Mayor White did an amazing job bringing them back in, bringing families back in. That's the lifeblood of our city. I want to raise my kids here. Not only do I want to raise them in a city that's safe, and a city that is as wonderful as it is, and everything can be made better. And the thing that we know when we get older is that you're not perfect, and no one is perfect, and we all have faults, and there's always room for improvement. And I think that the city, as great as it is, always has some room for improvement. And so I'm running to be city councilor because of the things that I see, the faces that I watch when we pass by dog poop in front of our homes, and traffic, and everything else that concerns us. So thank you all very much. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having me here. Last but not least, I hope you guys are not too hot out there. Hi, my name is Kristen Mobilia. I'm a 20-year District 8 resident running for Boston City Council. Just want to thank all the hosts, plenty of hosts who are making sure this event is going on, and all of you for really taking the time to commit to your community by being here. Also, Margaret McKenna for moderating. Thank you so much. I think my fellow candidates here and I can agree Boston's a great city.
I think you can all agree too. It's amazing. We have culture, diversity, we have amazing neighborhood organizations and institutions. We have so many things that are great, but we have so many challenges to address. We need to focus on public education, affordable housing, development, transportation, climate change. Really need to make sure we don't keep those blinders on and that we really focus on solutions that are short-term and long-term. So what's the difference between this whole crew up here? What does it come down to? I think it comes down to approach and experience. I've had 20 years of executive level negotiating and budgeting experience, and I combine that with hands-on community advocacy. I think that's a real difference. I also stand up when it matters. You see me 2 years ago when I ran for office. It's not an easy thing to do. I don't wait when things are convenient. I wait for when we need to make action happen. And I think that we all need that in our Boston City Councilor. You know, I'm the candidate who's been out in the neighborhoods day in, day out, week after week, for years, not just because I'm running for Boston City Council. I've been meeting with residents, local business owners, other community advocates, neighborhood organizations. I think that we need to work together to balance the growth and preserving what's really important in this city. Please, I ask for your support tonight and on September 24th. Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we're going to start with questions, and what I'm going to ask you to do is to hold your applause, and because we'll have more time for questions. So if you want to give everybody a round of applause now, I suggest you do it. Okay, I'm told that if you want to sit down, I see 2 or 3 seats up here, but there is a room in back. The TV is going. You can watch it back there if you want to sit down. Seats in the next room. I'm going to ask some questions about education. I'm going to use this random list, and I'm going to start, Montez, with you, even though it is random. This is what the list says.
Absolutely.
So, both tech schools in the Commonwealth have some of the highest graduation rates in MCAS scores in the whole of Massachusetts. But Madison Park, Boston's Voc Tech school, continues to have these incredible challenges, and we have some of the lowest MCAS scores and the lowest graduation rates. What do you think? You know, we've gone again and again and again. What do you think some of the solutions may be?
I think some of our solutions are just this. I think we need to begin to re-engage every single member of our city in our child's education. It is our responsibilities as adults to educate our children. And that includes your neighbor, the teacher, and those parents. Part of what I would propose would be just this. Capping all class size at right around 20. And if you go above 20, that requires a second person in the classroom. And what I mean by that is just this. It is physically impossible to keep asking our great teachers to spend all this effort and go try to teach up and coach up these young people. When you get over 20, it becomes almost impossible for them to multitask in such a way. A second person in that classroom will help that. In addition, we need to also increase staffing levels to be able to send people to the homes to re-engage the parents. And what I mean by that is just this. If we have a parent who is not attending a PTA conference meeting, we shouldn't shame them. The school should go to them. Our system is great. Our schools are great. What we need to be able to do is empower our parents, empower our teachers, and empower our children.
So Montez, let me follow up, because my question was about Voc Tech schools in Madison Park in particular. So you answered the question generally. So I wonder if you have a comment about Madison Park in particular.
Madison Park, with respect to Madison Park specifically, I think we need to spend a little more effort in trying to focus in on our kids. I think giving an opportunity to every single kid to succeed is the way to go. Specifically, I think parent engagement does that. Specifically, I believe, I'm not sure it's a resources moment, but I believe parent engagement and addressing class size will help.
Okay. So, Kenzie, Boston Public Schools, 42% of the students are Latino, 35% are Black, 9% are Asian. Teachers, 20% are Black, 10% are Latino, 6% are Asian. And we are less diverse in the teacher corps than we were 10 years ago. So in fact, less, even though we're under a court order, all right, even though we're under court order to have no less than 25% African American teachers, we now have 20%. We went back from 24% down to 20%. What can we do about this? Because the evidence shows that if a student sees someone like themselves, they will, in fact, do better. So what can we do?
Thank you for the question. I agree, it's really important. We've, I think, seen some limited success with, I have some friends who have gone through the Boston Teacher Residency Program, and we've had some folks come through that who have been really great. I think, it's interesting, one way of thinking about this would be kind of both problems at once. So when you were asking Montez about Voc Tech, one of the things I was thinking about, well, at Madison Park, we need to look at who's actually getting jobs out of that, and we need to double down on some of those trajectories. Similarly, I think we should be thinking about how are we educating our Boston Public School students to become our Boston Public School teachers. It's a question I've wrestled with a lot. I taught civics in the Boston Public Schools once a week all through college, and I thought a lot about the irony of being a white person teaching about the great civil rights victory of Brown versus Board of Education to a classroom of all black and brown students. So I think it's an urgent question. I don't think I have the answer, but I think similarly to how with the cadet program and the police, we started to realize that, look, if you want this to change, you just can't keep doing the same thing over and over. We need to look at our recruiting pipeline for teachers and think about how do we, before the moment of hire, how do we lay that pathway so that we're able to bring that workforce in.
Jennifer, Boston Latin, ranked one of the best high schools in the country. It does not come close to reflect the city population's diversity. Do you think it should? If so, how would that happen?
Absolutely, I definitely think that it should. I think, as a parent of kids in middle school and high school, one of the things that you look at are who their friends are and who they're with and how they're going to develop. And I think in Boston, what we do is we have a city that's really a have and have-not city. And so kids on this side of the city, parents are able to afford tutors. For kids on other parts of the city, they can't afford tutors or they don't know how to access those tutors. And I think that one of the important things that we could do is at our public libraries and at our community centers, figure out a way to have tutors who can be there for our students that are applying to middle school to up their grades, because we don't want to stop Boston Latin from being the best school that it is, because all of our kids deserve to have an amazing education. But I think it's really those test scores. When you're applying to a test school, they're looking at those test scores, and I think the best way is for us to find a way to get these kids to be tutored to pass that exam.
Okay. These are questions. If anybody else wants to chime in, you're welcome to as we go on. Kenzie?
Can I just chime in quickly on that? I mean, I do think that the Rappaport Center did an interesting report in the fall about the question of whether we should be looking at using the MCAS instead of the ISEE for admissions to our exam schools. I think the reality is that the MCAS is a test which, for better or worse, we currently teach to, and the ISEE is not, and that's part of what makes tutoring so essential. So it seems to me like tutoring is one approach, but probably the more root of the problem approach would be to really look at our admissions for our exam schools.
Just want to add one more thing. I have a lot of friends who are teachers and social workers in the system, and it's really important. Kids need that extra support to be successful, to have a social worker to speak with. It's such high pressure when you're at the Latin level.
Great, thanks. I'm really looking forward to asking this question. Having been a college president, there is a $60 million in unpaid pilot, meaning payment in lieu of taxes, from universities and hospitals, mostly universities. So people know what that is. It's payment in lieu of taxes. What should be done about it? $60 million that is an agreement. They're voluntary payments, but they're unpaid. There are some universities and hospitals pay 100%, and there are some universities and hospitals who end up paying 20%. Kristen, you're up next.
Thanks. I think it's one of my favorite questions. Thanks for asking that. It's an embarrassment, honestly, that these institutions are not pulling their weight. I think BU's at one of the top in terms of schools. I went to Northeastern for my MBA, and it's down below 50%. Not only are they not paying what they agreed to many years ago, but they aren't even assessing it at the current value of what the property values are for any of these institutions. They're all expanding into our neighborhoods and using our infrastructure and our city resources, and it's really a long time coming to make this right.
So anybody got an idea about how to make this right?
Well, first is to make sure the assessments are done properly, which I know is already moving forward, and I'm hoping we're going to get some larger numbers there. We rely heavily on property taxes of all of our homes around the city, and we really need to come up to speed in terms of institutions.
Okay. Sure.
Beyond just hoping and praying they pay their tax, it is clear they've made the decision they're not going to pay. That's what they said. At some point, we need to sit down and remove their tax exempt status for any place who is not pulling its weight. That's what we need to do.
I heard those underlying claps. Okay, who's up there? Helene. Okay, while there are empty seats in many schools, in many classrooms, District 8 has sections that are, I would call, school deserts, or school-free zones. What do you think can be done about this?
And we definitely need local schools. I'm a public school student, former public school student, and so are a lot of my friends who are all now of childbearing age. Is a weird thing to say, but everybody's having kids. And a lot of people want to stay in the city. I know millennials in particular, our generation is an urban generation. We really want to stay here. And there are a couple of reasons that we move out. Housing affordability is a big one, but the lack of local schools is number two. When people are thinking about the experience that they want for their kids, they want a local school that they can actually be a part of that community and that is close enough, especially in the K through 6, K through 8 ages. So it's honestly really hard. Property values are so high in Back Bay that it feels almost impossible to figure out how we're going to do this. But I think if we sit down and say this is a priority, we can look and figure out, are there any properties around here where we could actually build a school and say this is something that we really want to invest in.
So one of the items I don't think we've heard yet is that teachers need to be paid a living wage. How do we expect more teachers to be involved or want to teach in Boston when they're not making enough that actually pay the rent that's even considered affordable? The second part is teachers have to be able to have the resources just for their classrooms to do their job. As a product of a son of a teacher, you know, our school week always started a week before, where we went to school aids and bought all the supplies with our personal money to put the resources in the classrooms. No teacher in the greater Boston area should be doing that. And I think, you know, to have more teachers in the classroom, especially diversified teachers, they need to feel that they can actually live in the city, which is one of the fundamental pieces of any urban area.
Can I just quickly say, so I think a downtown school, it's critical, especially when you look at the data. I sat down with Bruce Kiernan from Downtown Schools, and one of the things he talked about is with the expansion of the Elliott, it's gotten a little bit better, the sort of match to kids who are looking to move into the schools and the seats on the Beacon Hill end of the district, although there's still no school there. But up at the Upper Back Bay and Fenway, it's like 2 kids for every 1 seat that within any kind of reasonable walk zone. And when you consider that a lot of parents are just opting out of the system altogether, the mismatch is more acute. To me, our public schools in the city, part of making them great is making them a place that like every neighborhood of the city is bought into, is involved in. And I think one of your roles as a city councilor is to look for opportunities, to look for that building that's becoming excess in another department in the city and saying, can we use that for a school, to like making it clear to the mayor that this is a priority for the district. I also think thinking about creative ways like, hey, could we expand, as we're expanding early ed across the district, could we expand some early ed seats downtown and maybe make that a way to grow the pipeline for a school that kind of clarifies the demand. Because we do have to remember that in District 8, we're operating within the whole build BPS context. And so I spent some time working as the budget director for a city councilor. Anytime you're talking about a new school, you're talking about a significant budget line item, capital thing. And so for us to make this a reality, we have to have a plan to get there, and it has to be in the context of the whole school system. But I think it's really important for our district, and I know for me it would be a priority.
Okay, you want to keep the rebuttals 30 seconds, guys, okay?
I'm not sure, I might be the only parent up here, but I think that, the Elliott is an amazing school, and it's expanding like crazy, which if you talk to anyone in the North End, it is way too much for them. There's so much traffic around. But beside that, any of us in here that are parents, the biggest joy is to walk your kids to school in the morning and to see their classmates on the way to school and to walk them home in the afternoon. And that's what our friends in the suburbs get to have, and we don't have that. And so what happens in this neighborhood is that between the high price of living and the schools, it becomes almost too much and people move out to the suburbs. And so what I would say is that we start small, we find a piece of property, start a couple of grades in there, and build up from there, like all the other private schools do.
Okay, Langdon. We have a new superintendent in Boston, and what would you advise her should be her one or two highest priorities?
I would say maybe just the number one priority is to close the opportunity gap between a Boston Public School student and what's actually happening in the city. Our students today are concerned and or not achieving the opportunities that the rest of us that are coming out of colleges are achieving. I think it was just mentioned this past week, looking at summer programs, STEM programs, capitalizing on the resources and some of the industry leaders that are in Boston today as a way to engage the students. Finding mentorship is key, and finding mentorship that the student can relate to. We talked about that a little earlier, but Boston has to close the opportunity gap so no public school student can sit in their home, in their classroom, look at a city and feel that they can't achieve or get there.
So how do you close the opportunity gap? Let's go through here. Name one thing that works that closes the opportunity gap.
Universal pre-K.
Absolutely, pre-K.
I agree as well, plus additional support services.
Making sure every student has the resources they need and free lunches.
Universal pre-K and building schools in our neighborhood.
Yeah, so the BPS pre-K is the one thing that we've really got data that shows that it's closing the opportunity gap right now. And on social supports, I would just say we have wild inequities in our school, in schools in terms of what nurses, school psychologists, librarians, et cetera, are there. And when we want to talk about closing the opportunity gap, I think closing the inequities there really need to be prioritized.
Okay. So Montez, what would you warn our new superintendent about? I mean, we know we live in a city with no politics involved. There's no politics in education. But if you were going to talk about politics to her, what would you recommend that she do or stay away from or talk to, or, if you wanted to give her some advice about the politics or what kind of trouble she could get in the city?
If I were presumed to give her advice, I would do this. Everything you need to do needs to be transparent. From every bit of selection, from every hold yourself more accountable than every person you supervise, I would ask just that moment. I think a lot of the problems we were having in the last go around was no one understood how things were coming. You were being told information, things were changing, and you weren't really given an opportunity to be prepared to deal with those things. Transparency would be the one piece of advice I would suggest to our new superintendent, and I wish her luck.
We all wish her luck. Kristen, there is a tension between pedestrians, bike riders, and car drivers. Do you have some ideas of a plan to relieve this tension?
Well, thank you for the question. There are many people obviously working on these issues. We have bike lanes that are temporary, looking to go permanent. I think one major thing that we need to start talking about is that anybody who's on the road on any type of wheels needs to abide by the laws of the road. I think that's where we're getting into a lot of issues. Bicycle riders, I'm one myself, that are not using bike lanes, going through red lights, etc., that we really need to clamp down on that type of thing. We have new scooters coming into town, electric skateboards. We really need to think about how all these modes of transport are really going to be able to live on the road together in a safe manner and make sure the pedestrians aren't getting run over in the meantime. I knew that there's a lot of city planning right now. There's a big project going on in Kenmore Square with the new hotel. It's supposed to be iconic. It's huge. And they're going to reroute Kenmore Square in order to make it safer and the flow a bit easier. So there are projects. I go out to a lot of community meetings. I raise my hand and make sure that we're talking about transportation, not on a street in a neighborhood, but in a full circuit of a large part of the city.
Why don't we go with and then Landon?
Okay. So this is actually the #1 issue that comes up at every single door, believe it or not, is bikes versus cars, and it's where I get to practice my negotiation skills. And the way that I built consensus is saying the current system sets it up you to fail, right? It's putting bikes and cars in the exact same roadways. So what we need to do is actually, on my first 30 days, what I would do is come up with a comprehensive plan for bike routes across the city with physical barriers, and the compromise is at the same time we then start enforcing traffic laws on the bikes. So everybody knows where they're supposed to be, they know the rules, they're abiding by them, and everybody is way less stressed out and hopefully a lot more safe.
Yeah, so this is also the most asked about issue, I think, for many of us. What a great innovative idea that I heard from residents just speaking to them is the white barriers that currently exist to separate the bike lanes aren't really there. They get run over. They don't exist. Moving the meters off of the street curb to that barrier would automatically keep the cars there so that the bike lanes could actually be available for bikers. And I think the proper signage in this city needs to be in place because nobody knows where things are going.
How many of you are in favor of a designated bike lane separated from the cars? All of you. How many of you are in favor of a designated bus lanes? Where?
A system, right?
Depends.
So I think a system across the city. They've done traffic studies that show that it's actually better for everybody involved. The buses are there, and will encourage more people to actually get on buses. So we're not asking you to get out of your car and get on a bus, but maybe the person before and behind you in traffic would if they knew the buses were reliable and on time.
Okay, Jennifer, the T is going to a no cash system and higher fares. Some believe that this no cash system will be difficult for people from a lower income bracket. And some believe we should actually move to a system of a fare, this is my Rhode Island accent, sorry, fare-free system. F-A-R-E, free system. What do you think the answer to this is? How do we create equity in the T?
So I think that if you're a user, you should be paying for the services. And so just like if I'm driving my car and I'm driving on the Mass Pike, I have to pay a toll. It's the same thing on the T. Fortunately, it's a lot less. In Massachusetts, the MBTA is actually 50% cheaper than what the New York City transit system is. It's cheaper by about 25% than what the metro in Washington, D.C. is. So we actually get a deal here, comparatively, though we need a lot of work in our transportation system. As far as it being a cashless system, I do think that causes inequities. I don't think that everyone has a Charlie card, has a credit card to pay for their Charlie card. Sorry, I'm having the same stump problem. And so I think that it would be that might be too aggressive at this point, but I don't think that it should be free.
Kenzie?
So when you go to the public library, does this work?
You got unplugged.
Oh, I unplugged.
Oh, you unplugged yourself.
All right, never mind. I'll discuss my When you go to the public library, you don't pay $3 for a book instead of 30. The book is free. And that's because we have a concept that it's good for our whole society for people to have like very low barriers for access to knowledge. I think we need to shift away from thinking about public transportation as something where we're subsidizing low-income users, and instead think of it as a public good, as something that when people are on transit, first of all, they're not clogging the traffic in the same way. We're lowering emissions. We're saving the planet. We're getting people where they need to be. I mean, these are a lot of public goods, and when we see it as paying for that, I think it starts to make a lot less sense to talk about sort of user fees. So to me, the goal absolutely should be a fare free T. And I also want to say that at the Boston Housing Authority, I've actually been convening focus groups for the last couple of years for our tenants with the MBTA, looking at the challenge of the rollout of the cashless, and I do think it's going to be a real issue, but I think that provides us with a real opportunity because this system is going to be so much more capable of experimenting with things like lower fares and means-tested fares and all kinds of things that I think we could actually use this opportunity instead of being something that heightens inequity. It's an opportunity to move towards a system where we really acknowledge the benefits that public transportation give to all of us in our whole society.
Kristen?
Thank you. It may not be easy at first to go to a free fare system, so I think we need to think about, where do we take steps in between to get there. We really need to incent people to get out of those cars. So how can we get it to that particular level? And then to show on the flip side what we'd be saving in terms of pollution and other issues so that we can really show where that balance is, that it may not cost as much after all.
Talking about cars, anybody want to talk about what we should do about the Lyfts and the Ubers clogging the streets in Boston? Do you think there should be a cap on the number of them that can be in the city at any one time?
Yeah, I'll speak to that first. I think the first point is that we should always be investing in ways for people to not have a car in the city, but we shouldn't penalize people who already have a car in the city. I've been here for 10 years. 10 years ago, the cab situation was extremely bad. Of course, Uber and Lyft have grown faster than I think anybody could have predicted, and what it's doing is tearing up the roads. I think if there is a cap for Uber and Lyft, right, what is that going to do to the accessibility and alternative transportation methods that the city is excited about? What I would like to see is if any additional cap or revenue that can come from these driving companies goes right back into the roads that they're tearing up.
Montez?
I would not support a cap on Uber and Lyft, and the reason I wouldn't support that cap is because I believe that is people's income. That is our neighbors, that is our brothers and sisters who are out there working. That is their second job. I am not seeking to cap their income. However, I would advocate different pickup zones, getting them off of the main streets, getting them off of main roads, and putting them in a place where the city does car routes, and allowing them to pull over and do pick up and drop off of main thoroughfares, that way they're not stopping traffic.
I'd also like to see some sort of certification for drivers. Right now I'm seeing a lot of drivers pull over right after a stoplight or in really inconvenient areas that clogs up traffic. And I think that the cab drivers are better at that. They could still do a little improvement as well. But it's really important that they really understand the rules of the road. They know how to drive the city. And I think one other key piece is that we need to figure out how to really regulate GPS, because Uber drivers and Lyfts are using all these roads that are cutting through neighborhoods and really destroying parts of the neighborhoods.
I just want to add really quickly that we have to have an emissions lens on this. I mean, Uber and Lyft can be a way that we really increase rideshare and bring down overall car trips, or it could be a way that we massively increase them, and the way that we do regulation affects that. So there's a bill right now that would have differential taxes, this is up to the state legislature, depending on whether or not you're sharing that ride. In the long run, if we want to move towards a net zero carbon Boston by 2050, if we want to make steps in that direction, we have to be talking about these things also in that lens.
Helene, you're up here. Some police make as much or more in overtime as their salary. Do you think this is a problem? Is there some other way to manage this?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I do think it's a problem. One of the things that I think about a lot as the daughter of small business owners and somebody who spent my, working life in business prior to running for office is that it doesn't matter how good your idea is if you don't have a plan or budget to get there. And I mean that in a citywide level. We can have all these great plans for our city, but if we're not really carefully managing the budget and checking the details, then I don't think we're actually going to be able to get there. So I think with police overtime, there's a bit of a corruption thing going on there too. I don't think we can ignore that. So I think we should investigate that. But more generally, we should just be making sure that we are providing better oversight of our resources.
I'll chime in. So on the opposite, I don't think it's a problem. I think our police staff is already understaffed. The one thing they'll tell you about bike safety, right, is they would love to police the people that are riding right through the lights. They don't have the resource or the bandwidth to actually do it. So these people are working hours, lots and lots of hours, just to currently deal with the issues that this city and this population densely in this area are currently experiencing every day.
We have you asked about the sort of diversity of the VPS staff. We also have a diversity in the police sort of mismatch in our city. I think actually talking about how do we train cadets and build the police force so that more of that time can be regular hours as opposed to overtime is one of the ways of addressing this problem and also addressing that diversity issue in our police force.
I regularly go to police meetings across this district and have for years. I know the police officers, they know me. I talk a lot about their overtime. A lot of it is required. They prefer not to do it. They actually have to call in sick to go to a wedding or do a family event. And I think a lot of this has to do with the overprogramming of our city in terms of Boston Common, the Esplanade, Fenway Park, and go on. And they have to do all these extra duties to cover these things. And then they aren't available for the basic needs of our neighborhoods.
And they only give the police exam every 2 years. They only do the training academy every 2 years. So that's why they're very short of people, because the training academy only goes every 2 years. So the fire department. So this is where I used to spend a lot of my time as a young civil rights lawyer suing fire departments. Our fire department is one of the least diverse in the whole country in terms of both people of color and women. So if you like to be first, we're one of the first. We're right on the top of the list. So what can we do about this? I mean, we really, we want to be known known for things. This is not one of the things we want to be known for, and it is a hard nut to crack. Fire departments are one of the hardest things to change, because I don't know whether you know, but the history of fire departments is my grandfather was a firefighter. My son's a fire. That is a family tradition in a lot of cities. I mean, not in Boston. In a lot of cities, that's a tradition. So it's a tough.
Do you want someone to answer?
I want an answer. Right. I mean, I've had an answer, but it was way back then, and I'd prefer not to sue people. So I mean, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Montez.
Sure. Well, all right. Well, the first thing I would call for, with respect to that, is we need, one, to start imposing Boston residency on our firefighters as they come into our city, and I mean that is established before they get the job. One. Two, we need to prioritize women and people of color also from our city. That way we ensure not just anyone comes in, but it's people from our city, and we're putting women on the job, and we're putting people of color on the job. And the reason why that is important is that's how you continue to grow a neighborhood, is people battling fires and saving us from our city, knowing our streets, and being from here. Thank you.
We talked a little bit about vocational education earlier. I think this is a perfect opportunity for internships to train younger folks, men, women, and so that they're developing these relationships as they're getting involved in the fire department before they get there. So they have those stronger relationships before they hit the ground and they are confronted by this legacy of habits within that department.
So right now, the city residency requirement for police and fire is 1 year of residency. So how many of you would like to see that increased, and to what?
I would go at least 5 or 10 years. I would want them here.
Okay.
I mean, My concern about that is it would go against our diversity focus. I think creating more exclusionary, saying that we're excluding more people is not a good thing. So, I can't speak to the details enough to go more than that, but at a gut reaction, that feels weird.
Yeah, I think to proactively recruit, minorities, women, firefighters, you can't close off the people that haven't lived here for X number of years. You should be welcoming to anybody that wants to come in the city and serve on the fire department, no matter who they are, and sit down with the fire department and try to work out these programs that can actively show these people that there are value to this. It is a respectable profession, and that in Boston, you can do it. Doesn't matter what your background is.
And I would also say that, one, I agree. We don't need anything to be more exclusionary. The firefighters do an amazing job in this city, and a very tough job. And you watch them with the traffic, and they can't get through. But I think that to say that this is just the way it's always been done in anything is the wrong way to go in 2019. And I think that we can do a lot better by making policies where we are advancing women and people of color into these positions, but also still keeping the legacy of the folks who have been there for a long time.
Okay, so all of you mentioned housing as a major issue on your platforms, affordable housing. For people who have lived in the city for decades, they can't afford to pay their taxes if they bought their home 30 years ago because of the assessment and what their taxes are today. And if you're a low income or middle income person, to buy an apartment or a condo or a house today in Boston is very difficult to do. So what can the city council do to improve this situation? I throw it out there.
I think, like I said, this is one of the things that originally got me really motivated. I know the mayor has a big plan right now to build more housing, and that is part of the solution, but it's not the only thing. What we notice, especially in Fenway, where all this new build is going up, is it's a ton of foreign investors who are coming in, buying investment apartments that they're not even living in, which further, exacerbates the problem. We also have a lot of universities in our district, and so a lot of those students live in the double and triple deckers, which pushes out families who've been there for a long time. So I support the plans for universities to build more on-site housing. I think that's critical. And the other thing that I would look at is making sure that we are keeping people in place, especially people of color, certain socioeconomic groups, and the elderly. And so looking at some form of rent stabilization for those groups, I think would be super important.
So I've been working on affordable housing in the city for the last few years. I think you really need all levels, every leg of the ladder approach. So, for instance, I've been working at the Boston Housing Authority. We're really lucky in the city. We built public housing early, and so we built it all over the city. It's not like stuck in one neighborhood. It's transit accessible. That we have comparatively a lot of it. But the scary part is it was built in the 30s and 40s, and it's gotten well past its sort of natural life, and we can't afford to lose any of those units. We've got 40,000 people on the BHA wait list. Every day people walk in and say, when am I going to get off this wait list? So on the one hand, we need to preserve those units. I work to get capital spending for that for the first time this year in our budget. On the flip side, the other way that we free up units for really low income people is by having units for people who maybe start to make more money to move into. So that's looking at affordable home ownership in the city. The Community Preservation Act just funded a $3 million down payment assistance program. I think I had the opportunity to visit someone in Mission Hill who bought their house with such a program 25 years ago, and it's been an anchor of that community since. We've got to look for ways to do more of that. I think as a city councilor, there's a million different things that you can work on, and it's kind of one of those things where you need a big picture strategy, and then it lands on the ground in very specific places in the district every day, and you've got to be there and show up for those units. And we need to get past saying affordable for who and pitting our different levels of affordability against each other and towards a system where we actually have each rung of the ladder together. So thanks.
Yep. So obviously the most discussed issue in the entire city, I think two issues need to be solved, and it can be done by city council. First is the way that the average median income, AMI, is calculated today. It incorporates students who live in the city and their parents are paying the rent for them. And secondly, it accounts for international investors parking their money here. And then you're also counting that to inflate what is, quote, the average median income. If you switch this to only taking fact of people who have lived and worked here for 5+ years, you're going to get a much different average median income per area than you've ever seen across the city. That should ideally lower what is affordable. The second piece is that the cost to do any sort of construction or real estate development in this city is about 30 to 40% higher. And the give and take is, I'm a builder, I can only do this many units, I won't make any money. The city says, well, we need you to build more. You have to incentivize these people to continue to build units that are affordable and not only prioritize profits. Because today it's 1% of the units being built are actually affordable in Boston. 1%.
Jennifer. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll be super quick. There's so much development going on in this district, and there are many times where we allow the developer to pay to move affordable housing off of site, and I think that's completely wrong, and we should really be standing up and not letting that happen.
That was one of the questions I want to move to is Boston development policy calls for 13% of a development to be set aside as affordable housing. Should that be changed? Should it be percentage moved up? And if it should be increased to what? Jennifer, why don't we start with you?
So, it's an interesting question because I think that there are two types of affordable housing. There's affordable housing with subsidies, and there's affordable housing to keep our students and our talent here, to keep our families here, and to keep people accruing wealth. And so I think that there is a way to say there's not change that number, but maybe make another category. And the next category be for our workforce housing, be for our market housing, be for people who can stay here and use their talents in the city, drive the economy, keep everything moving, and we want to encourage those people, I think, ultimately to own homes. And because the way to wealth is to own a home. And so I think if we can figure out a way not to change that cap, but to encourage people to stay here, to live here, and then to buy here, that will be a better system.
So I want to go back to the question, though. So it's 13% now. Do you think that should be increased?
No, because I think we need to build another category on top of it.
Okay, understood.
And it's 13
Yes.
is the sort of the requirement.
Right,
but
for
today,
affordable housing.
for affordable housing.
But you talked about how affordable housing definition in itself is a problem.
Right. So if anybody looks at the real data, right, it's truly 1% of the new units being built in this city is affordable.
Right.
And the only way to do that, at least from my perspective, and Jennifer kind of hit on it, is that you have to make it easier for people to build affordably and own affordably. A permit in Boston cannot take 2 years to get something small done. It needs to take 2 weeks. We have to fix that, especially for people who are committed to affordable housing as we are.
To answer your question, yes, we should increase the minimum level from 13% to a higher number. I believe we should work with the developer to make sure they can still make an appropriate profit, but that number does need to be increased if we actually do want to increase affordable housing. With respect to those that, like the Beverly is a prime example on the West End, where that was all transferred affordable housing moments from from the various high rises around it. I would suggest if we're going to do that, at a minimum, we need to make sure if you're going to transfer it out and sell it, if you're going to build one of those buildings, you need to build at least something above 20 to 25% affordable housing if you're going to transfer your 13% obligations.
I'll just say quickly that I think you want to think about, yes, possibly raising from 13% to more, but the other option is to buy down to make those affordable units that are included be at a lower, for people of a lower income. So right now they're at 70% AMI, 80 to 100% for home ownership. So basically you can make more units at that level, or you can do the same number, say, of units you're doing now, but you can make more of them deeply affordable. And I think that's another way of thinking about changing the regulation.
And keep doing this to you.
Yes.
I think that we do need to increase that percentage. I think there's room in the budget there. A lot of developers have been building multiple buildings. I think they've made a bit of profit so far.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I think one of the other things that happens in sometimes smaller projects is they'll put a couple of affordable housing units, but then there'll be an expiration on it. And we can't let those expire.
So there are people walking around. If you have a question on a card, this is the time to turn it in. Okay?
The one that I gave you. At some point, Sharon will get it from you.
Okay. All right, talking about development, what can be done to make the new BRA, which is now the BPOA, BPA, whatever, more transparent and accountable? The thing that we can never understand what they're doing or when they're doing it or why they did it in terms of development, we usually find out after they did it or just before they're going to do it, and we never understand the total vision, and usually it's too late to do anything about it, generally, whatever it's called now. What can we do to make it more transparent and accountable? Why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so this is a major gripe that I have. In these meetings, if you haven't been, what happens is the developer shows up with a super fancy, usually completely unintelligible PowerPoint, and then the BPDA just kind of sits there and lets them present, and it's a little bit of a shock and awe tactic where they're like, here are all these great things that we're doing and these numbers and these statistics. And for the average person who doesn't have the time to do research because we've got family, we've got kids, we're working full time, it makes you feel powerless, it makes you feel hopeless, and it makes you feel like you can't have any control over your own neighborhood. And that's a terrible thing to do to people. So I think the first thing is make sure that whatever information developers are presenting, BPDA has to hold them accountable to actually making it accessible. I know Lydia Edwards has done some really great work there. We also do need to make the BPDA more transparent in general. The best way to have any kind of corruption, and I'm not saying it's there now, but in general, is to make things obscure. If we open everything up, we let people actually have a voice, understand what's happening, advocate for themselves, it will behoove everybody.
Yeah, I'll just chime in really quick. Do the math and look at the data. We need to see the data that these real estate companies, as well as BPDA, have put together for every project that cannot be accessed today. Everybody in Boston should have access to this information every single day.
I would also say everyone should have access to the information, but things that can't continue to happen is what happened to me in my neighborhood with the mass general expansion. They had their meeting with us after the public comment period. That's when they showed up, is after the public comment period. That cannot happen. The BPDA at that moment should have put an immediate pause on it, allowed for public comment, and then move forward.
A couple of years ago, I got really involved in the question of how we use the moment of the BPDA coming and asking for the renewal of its urban renewal powers as a way to exert more oversight over them. And we're kind of now halfway through that period again. So I think that when we think about requiring the BPDA to really do planning before it does development in our neighborhoods, giving our IAGs more teeth, letting people not just say how they want this development to happen within very limited bounds, but to weigh in more seriously, I think that thinking about the mechanism of these urban renewal powers, which are going to expire again in 3 years, is a really good way for us to actually change something about this system.
I think the only way we're really going to change things is if the BPDA has to report not only to the mayor, but to Boston City Council. It's going to take a long time to do that, but I think we all have to work together and really make sure that that happens. It has to go through state legislature, but that's really the only way we're going to turn this boat around.
Okay, let's move to cannabis. Why not? Cannabis is now legal. The law required preference be given to neighborhoods most impacted by the war on drugs. That goal seems to be slipping away, if it hasn't slipped away. What can we do now to, in fact, in any way impact what's happening in Boston? Because, it was clear this was the goal. Is there anything we can do? Anything that the city council can do to help neighborhoods and people who live in these neighborhoods gain some of the profit that's going to come from this industry?
If I can speak to that, because it's one of the issues that's most dear to my heart. I have a good friend who's actually in the audience today who is a trained lawyer, really educated, smart, can read legalese, and is a person of color, and I think applies for 2 or 3 of the different categories of people who are allowed to get permits early. And she got it mostly just to see how it was, and thinking about maybe opening a shop, but wanted to see how the process was for people like her. And she said the thing is, all these meetings happen, and she'll get an email an hour before one of the permitting meetings that says, by the way, the meeting that you have to attend to get your permit is in 1 hour. And there's no way she can go there. And you know who shows up? All the people who are into the system. It's not okay. The other huge issue is financing and funding. Banks do not want to give loans to the cannabis industry for obvious reasons, right? Even if it's legal in Massachusetts, it's not legal federally. And so the only people who have the funds to open these shops are those who've got private funding. There is no way that that's going to be fair. We have to take a deep look and figure out how are we funding these shops? How are we actually making it so that people of color and people of a lower economic status are actually able to plunge into this industry?
I think we need to ask for a further refined process. It's a complete, cowboy show right now. People are going in because they get appointments in a certain order, so they get first crack at something. I've gone to a lot of meetings throughout Back Bay, Fenway area, and I think that I've noticed that one particular company has really poor business practices, but they're being allowed to move forward in the process. Another group actually came up with an amazing plan where they're going to hire 75% minorities, look for another 25% from neighborhood groups. They're really going to give things back to the community, and they have a complete security plan. So we all have to go and raise our hands and vote for the right place.
And I'll just add, I don't think it's just about the cannabis industry. It's the hot topic because the money is so huge, but 1% of city contracts has gone to minority and women-owned businesses. That's where the problem actually is. It's not just about cannabis. It's cannabis. It's about the entire city. That has to be increased, and you will see more diverse women-owned businesses getting city contracts.
So that's one of my questions. Only 1% of vendors and contracts go to people of color and women in the city of Boston. There are other cities who have a set-aside of a percent that have to go to. It used to be called the Philadelphia plan in the old days. Would you be in favor of a set-aside of a certain percent?
I'll just wrap this one up. No, I'll answer this one. Yes, absolutely. There should be a set aside. And I think Helene actually made the point clear. The process to get these city contracts needs to be transparent. You can't get an email 1 hour before and expect to even compete for these things. And some will say that the process today is by design, but that has to change so that other smart entrepreneur, doesn't matter their background, can compete to get these city contracts in Boston.
I think a set-aside makes sense. I think a program to actually qualify more of these businesses, because part of the problem is if they're not officially qualified, they don't always get in the pipeline. I also think that we just saw at Massport, they changed their procurement process to actually award points for diverse teams, and it resulted in a really major project being awarded to the most diverse team that Massport has done business with for a long time. So I think if you get into the weeds of procurement law, there's a lot that we could do in the city to change the situation.
Yes, we actually should have a set aside that also has a set aside for women and minorities, but also for Boston residents.
Let's go down.
Oh, sure, absolutely. There's no doubt that should happen. And creating more education so people understand when they have to get into the process. And you can even go back, again, to the vocational education area of internships, et cetera, and really prepping people as they're moving up through the ranks.
Yes, absolutely. We definitely need set-asides, and we need a lot of incentives. I mean, business is doing it right now. Corporations are doing it. Boards are being challenged to say, we're pulling our business unless you have 50% women on these boards. There is no reason why municipal government and why in our local businesses we are not doing the same.
Yeah, I think it's a more general question about diversity in Boston in general, and who's in power and who's actually making decisions. I'm an out and proud gay woman, and I will say in any power kind of situation meeting that I've been in, I've been generally the only gay person and 100% of the time the only lesbian in any room that I'm in. That's a problem. And it's about setting aside, you need to encourage businesses to actually act to take advantage of this, because it's not just, it's hard to be the first, right? So how are we incentivizing businesses to make sure that we have diversity so people can see people that represent themselves in positions of power and feel empowered that they can also reach that?
Jennifer, Boston is a coastal city. What are a few things we should be doing now to protect our environment and be more sustainable so that our children are not swimming where we're sitting, or our grandchildren?
Yeah, so I'm like the old lady here. So I remember a day when people were throwing trash out their windows. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago. It is a matter of pollution and it's recycling. Climate change is a real thing. Whether it's that it's freezing in May or it's hot in January, it is a real thing. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that we can do better. I don't have all the answers. I would love to sit with environmental groups and find some solutions, because that is a concern that all of our homes are going to be underwater.
All right, let me ask you to name one thing you think the city council could actually do that would impact climate change in Boston. Anybody?
I think,
Go ahead.
I would say just increase the urban tree canopy. There's a heck of a lot of trees here in Back Bay, and there are huge neighborhoods that don't have any at all. That's not cool.
And beyond that canopy, I would also advocate for making sure all of our buses going through the city are transitioning to electric. That being even the buses from all the hospitals and partners moving people around the city, and transitioning the city fleet also to electric vehicles.
But I would also add on top of that if you're a resident in the city and you have a car, it would be wonderful to have more stations that are electric car stations, because for those of us that would love to have one, you can't have one because there aren't a lot of those around.
I think the city council can do things to incentivize and even require changes in our energy infrastructure in the city. My grandmother, who's here tonight, went around Beacon Hill in the 50s and 60s asking her neighbors to get rid of their coal furnaces so that people could breathe the air. Like, now we're looking at problems, those trees, our tree canopies, our trees on Beacon Hill and Back Bay are dying from natural gas, and it's a more potent greenhouse gas when it escapes, as we know it is doing, than carbon dioxide. I think we've got to talk about energy infrastructure in the city, and I think that's something that the city council can work concretely on.
And I'll just add one thing that wasn't mentioned was, I personally lived through many climate events, Hurricane Katrina being one, and you can see firsthand that when you ignore the problem, they go the opposite way. The seawall in Boston, if anybody has recently seen it, when it rains a lot, the whole downtown becomes flooded. We have to start reinforcing the seawall, and that actually goes all the way down the Charles River, because the river will also flood going straight into the neighborhoods.
All right, these are questions that are for you, particularly because of your platforms or your experiences. Montez, you're a prosecutor,
Yes,
and one of the parts of your platform is safe neighborhoods. Do you believe DA Rachel Rollins' new policy of not prosecuting low-level offenders makes neighborhoods safer, or do you agree with her policy?
That policy, I don't think that's a fair characterization of what her policy is. But I don't agree with not prosecuting everything, because I think every single case needs to be done on a case-to-case basis. If someone is breaking into somebody's house, you absolutely should be prosecuted. If someone is stealing from a small business owner and this is a repeated behavior, you absolutely should be prosecuted. I know there's a list of 13 different things, and I actually believe her policy is closer or akin to what I've said than a flat blanket. I appreciate it gets reported as a flat blanket, but I think actually in practice what happens is you come in and you get assessed based on your criminal history or lack thereof. And if you don't have a criminal history and you stole some candy, of course you don't get prosecuted. But if you break into somebody's store and you're robbing a small business owner blind, then of course you get prosecuted.
So do people have comments on Rachel Rollins' policy in terms of support or not support?
Yeah, so the other part of what I worked on, besides conflict resolution in general, is restorative justice. And it's huge. And I don't want to comment specifically on Rachel Rollins, but I think something I'm really encouraged by is the move in Boston that I see from punitive measures towards more proactive measures and healing measures. We've got to heal our communities. And if you look at violence in particular, the vast majority of homicides that happen in Boston are perpetrated by young people ages 14 to 18, and it's gang-related violence. I've spent time riding around with the Boston Gang Unit, and what they do is an amazing proactive outreach program, getting kids off the streets and into union job training programs so that they'll actually have a source of income that is somewhat comparable to what they might be making illegally.
I've gone to a lot of police meetings and spoken to police captains across the district. They're having a really hard time right now, where a lot of the arrests that they're making in terms of drug charges, serious ones, that some people are getting released, and so they have some frustration. So what I'd say at this point is to really hope that the DA will start with early conversations to really make sure that we get to a better place, because it is a new policy, and so there's going to be some adjustments.
I just want to add that, so I think there is something in the DA's policy about, experienced prosecutors looking at sometimes those do not prosecute crimes are still going to be prosecuted. But I think it's really important for us to remember that having a list of minor crimes that we're not going to default prosecute, it's about breaking the prison to pipeline to prisons, and it's about redirecting our law enforcement resources. So in the city of Boston, we have a crazy rate of unsolved non-fatal shootings. So when you're talking about maybe let's spend less of our resources on prosecuting shoplifting, you're talking about spending more of your resources on solving non-fatal shootings. So I think it's a really important policy that she's pushing.
Jennifer, the last time a Republican was on the city council was 1981.
I was born then. Before that.
My oldest son was even born then. So, as the former chair of the Massachusetts Republican Party, and I have to say you did a really good job as the chair of the Republican Party, and some of us were sad that you did such a good job. You added, I think, you were a major part of adding 15 Republicans to the House. More? Okay. A significant number of Republicans in the State House. There was a Republican Party was moribund when you became the chair and you gave it life. Oof, hate to say this. Anyway, I want to say we're glad you're here. We're glad you accepted our invitation to walk into Ward 4 and Ward 5 Democratic Party. I admire you for coming. And I've known Jennifer a while, so I'm glad she joined us. But what would it be like for you as the sole Republican in a council of all Democrats with a Democratic mayor? What do you bring, and what do you think that would be like?
Thank you, Margaret. And so I just want to point out, number one, when I was chair of the Republican Party, I started when I was 36 years old. And this goes back, I was elected 10 years ago, and we increased by 17, and I'd like to say that most of the 17 were normal. I am not taking any responsibility for some of the crazy ones. They were not mine. So, you know what? We need a diversity of opinions. We need diversity in every body, not just in color, not just in gender, but in opinions and in different views and different backgrounds. What you see is not what you get. I'm a public school kid. I went to not just public elementary school and high school, but a public college. My dad dropped dead of a massive heart attack when I was 10 years old. I was raised by a single mom, and I was told to work my tail off. And that was going to be my key to getting out of the place where I was, which was not very hopeful. And my mom, all she said was, go to school, get your education, and work hard. And that's why I registered as a Republican, for no other reason whatsoever. And having 3 little girls today, I have a very vast view of the world, very diverse. I look at everything through their little eyes and through their perspectives. And I think that the city council, what it needs, is just someone who, one, has the experience, the life experience in going through, coming from the very bottom and moving up, and being able to watch her children grow a family in the city. And I think that is experience that I could bring to the city council. And it's not about politics. It's about your streets and our sidewalks and our traffic and our quality of life. And that's why it's a nonpartisan position.
Okay. Kristen, you ran for this position the last time. What did you learn from your race And is there anything different this time, or, lessons learned?
Sure, thank you. I did run last time. Plenty of lessons learned. This is a completely different race. We have somebody who's not incumbent. I ran last time on a pretty short runway. Started in the spring, going into a fall election year on a very tight budget. We got a third of the vote. We talked to a lot of folks, and basically the people that we spoke to, we got those votes. So it's so important to hit the doors. I think all these candidates know that's really how you do things. You get out there and you talk, and you have conversations. I've done that naturally for years and years before I ran, and that's what I kept doing. On election night, I raised my hand and said, you know what, I'm running again. I didn't wait to see if someone won't be running again. I just got right in there, stayed out there, was in the neighborhoods constantly.
Kenzie, you have been involved in housing policy in the city of Boston as an employee of the city of Boston. If you were a city councilor, you would now be giving very constructive advice to that same department. Would that be a challenge for you?
Thank you for the question. Well, I would say that I do a lot of lobbying, even as a Boston Housing Authority employee. One of the things you do if you do policy and planning is you think about what would be the best thing for us to do, and then you have to go around getting stakeholders on board, right? And that's other departments of the administration, it's other people inside of the agency, and that's definitely been a big part of my experience over the last couple of years. I started on housing really from outside of City Hall, so I looked around a couple of years ago and realized that I thought I was actually living through the decade where my city, our city, was going to decide whether there was still room in Boston for people from all walks of life, or if we were going to become a place that you had to have already won life's lotteries to live in, and that was unacceptable to me. So I looked around for ways to change that. I realized we needed more funds for affordable housing, and so I got involved with a group of people organizing to put the Community Preservation Act on the ballot. And I got to know a lot of city councilors by lobbying them, by showing up in their offices and saying, please, could we do this? And then the next step was to go to folks in the mayor's administration and say, hey, we would really like the mayor to be on board, because when we tried to do this 15 years ago, the mayor wasn't, and it didn't go through. And then when we got it on the ballot, I literally talked to thousands and thousands of Bostonians about why they should flip their ballot paper over and vote yes on 5. And stood outside in the rain at early voting and trained lots of volunteers and ran around the whole city. I mean, this was a coalition of people of every color, creed, income. And so I would say the place I've started from in housing is really one of an advocate and activist. And I've loved working for the lowest income Bostonians inside the Boston Housing Authority for the last couple of years. But my heart is from the place of let's go bigger, let's solve this problem. Thanks.
Langdon, you're a big data guy. You think we should make decisions based on data analysis. One of the decisions we made through data in an algorithm by some MIT folks was the algorithm we used for the Boston Public Schools to give parents and kids a list of schools they could choose from. Do you remember? And there was a school here, and a school here, and a school here, and a school here, and a school here. And let's just say it was confusing, to say the least, and because basically the idea was they would get a level 1 school, level 2 school, level 3 school, but they could be, all over, and they had to have one in their neighborhood, which could be any level school, right? So the number 1 school, level school, might be on the other side of the city, right? So maybe some of us don't feel warmly about some of this. So what kind of data-driven decisions, looking at some of the things we talked about today, you think would be helped in Boston?
So I think the first thing to note about data is if someone's giving you a conclusion based on the data, that they're already not approaching it the right way. The whole point of using the data is to articulate the data in a simple way that anybody can understand, and then it's up to the person who's looking at it to make an informed decision based on that data, not make the decision from the top down. As a city councilor, it is our job to look at the data and make the best decision, but the residents also have to be empowered with that information. It is so complicated, and I'll give kudos to Mayor Walsh that they're trying to make the data public, but it is so complicated to actually cipher through it. When we talk about using data to solve problems, 436 current overdue requests for unsafe sidewalks in this neighborhood only. This is since 2014. 400 areas where it is unsafe to walk past, roll your wheelchair past, the list goes on and on. I just ask, how is that possible for a city that is rich and as successful as Boston, where that is the case? It's these simple numbers that we need representatives that's going to ask why, and then after they get the answer, we need to solve them now. We cannot keep waiting because they just get bigger.
Why? What is the answer?
I think it's a pretty, probably complex answer. Bandwidth, resource, the same type of which street it's on, private versus public owned. There's so many different reasons, but at least that to me is where the conversation should be. Not next month there's 500 and the next month there's 600.
Yeah.
We have to be solving the ones that exist.
Helene, one of the things you've talked about a great deal is in this city is inclusion, to include everybody, no matter race, sexual orientation. But Boston is one of the cities in the country that has one of the largest wealth gaps in the city. And wealthy folks have access to a lot of resources here where other folks don't. I mean, one of the things, I've been involved with summer learning a long time, and one of the things that was most startling to me when I visited some of the summer learning programs in Dorchester, Mattapan, is some of those kids have never been in Central City, never been to Prudential, never been to the museums, just literally never been where we're standing, because they don't think they belong. So, how do we include and give access of the unbelievable resources this city has to those who have less resources to access them?
No, I'm glad you asked that. What powers me through knocking on doors and everything else that just takes a lot of sweat equity is the individual stories that I remember. And one moment for me that was really pivotal, I was 12 years old, 6th grade public classroom, and I remember looking around to my right and to my left, and we had a really diverse town, and seeing that even though we were in the same classroom, we were not all having the same experience. I had parents who were able to read to me at home and coach me when I didn't understand something, and a lot of other kids didn't have that. And so to me, it became about what are all of the other supports that we're providing to children who may not be getting it at home through no fault of their parents, just because not everybody is able to offer those same opportunities. I was listening to a podcast recently, Hidden Brain, if you guys know that one, and they were talking about how they've done longitudinal studies to figure out how can you make kids successful over the long term? How can you bring some equity of access back? And they did a program that actually brought kids, this was actually in Michigan, from lower socioeconomic status families to airports and to restaurants and trained them. And this is like, they were preschoolers, right? And so they gave them opportunities that they wouldn't have had with their own parents, which the reason that was so powerful is it gave the kids a sense of, I belong here, I am worthy, I can be in this space. And if you look 30 years beyond that study, they've seen that those kids are more likely to remain married if they're married, to hold jobs, and to own homes. So I think from a very young age, we have to think about what are the supports we're providing in general for schools, and then also how are we showing people that they actually belong throughout our city, not just in the neighborhoods where they were born.
Okay, we're ready to move to the lightning round. So much fun. So this is probably a yes, no, or I don't know, or I don't care. So, do you support sharing information between the Boston Police Department and ICE? No.
Not for anyone who's a victim or witness, but if someone's committed a serious crime, yes.
Yes, but it cannot be discriminatory.
No.
I'm with Montez. I think not for victims or witnesses, but for people who commit serious crimes.
No, we need to stop the federal overreach into our city.
Should the city council terms be 4 years instead of 2? Why don't we start with you?
No.
I'm out on this. I don't know if it's great to have to campaign every 2 years and if you can get things done.
I think it could be 4, but there should be term limits.
I think they should be 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. Campaigning and governing line up.
Are you in favor of some form of supervised injection facility?
Yes.
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 Yes, I've seen that in Vancouver as well.
Federal government says it is illegal, and so we have to follow their lead for now.
I can name 6 high school classmates of mine who died from opiate overdoses in the last couple of years. Yes.
Do you support the proposed plan to charge $25 for a residential parking permit?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have a car, yes.
No.
No.
Yes.
Should we have an elected school committee or continue with an appointed one? Or
I think we've seen in the past in the city how an elected school committee can be politicized in ways that isn't helpful to our students. So I don't want to move there, but I do think we could do the appointments differently to give more power to more stakeholders, more our teachers, our parents, our students, than currently. So I'd like to see it change, but I don't want to see it be a citywide elected.
I also don't want to see a citywide elected. However, I would like to have different stakeholders, specifically from each community, being able to make sure they have a voice in the appointment process.
Yeah, I'd like to see at least a half elected by the city and the other half appointed.
I've been speaking to a lot of parents with kids in the schools about a hybrid idea as well.
Yes, hybrid idea, half elected and half appointed.
We had the appointed school board when we were dealing with race and segregation issues a long time ago. We still have some of those issues, but I don't think the appointed school board is the way to get around that. I'm in favor of an elected school board.
would you support a civilian police review board? I'm going to be very popular with the police, so my son, who's 6'2", is going to walk me home. So
I'm going to be completely honest and say I want more time to think about that.
okay, that's fair.
I don't think so.
Can you give more specifics about that?
So a civilian review board generally it gets complaints and gets to review them first, as opposed to, they go up at the same time, both ways, in the department and the civilian review board. So they don't go all the way up through the department and then get reviewed. They go through the civilian process as well as the internal process.
Sure, I'd like to know how those people are selected before I answer that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, not for slowing the process down, no matter what the process is. Today we can meet with the police officers anytime to at least review the crime report, so maybe a hybrid of that, but nothing that will slow the actionable items down.
If you're talking about a parallel process where the civilian review board is people with appropriate qualifications and they're operating on a parallel structure with the police department, I would support that.
Yes, civilian review boards have been an important part of police accountability in other cities, and they've been an important advocacy point actually for decades over issues around police brutality. I'm an absolute yes on that.
Do you agree with a commitment to power all publicly owned or operated facilities with renewable energy by 2025? This is a proposal that's been going around. So just publicly owned or operated facilities with renewable energy by 2025.
Yes, you don't get to net zero in 2050 without some intermediate steps along the way.
Absolutely.
Of course, on the surface level, without the inflated cost affecting every single person who lives here.
I would definitely support that.
I think if it doesn't inflate costs, and I think if it has to be gradual, that we have to give people some time to get to that.
I don't think climate change is happening gradually, so I think we need to take strong steps, so I would be a strong yes.
Okay. So I would like each of you to tell me what are your top 2 priorities, the first 2 things you would do. And I don't mean like affordable housing, but the first 2 actions as besides finding your office in the bathroom, you know, what are the first two things you might want to bring as motions as a city councilor? A minute.
Yeah, I mean, the first one that I would do is the bike lanes. Again, climate change is not happening slowly. We need to take action right away, and it's just a huge public safety issue as well. So how are we making a thoughtful, holistic view of bike lanes across the city? And the second one would be universal pre-K. I think it's the one shot that we've got right now to make a real difference very quickly.
I think I would want to do, one, a traffic study and see where we could maybe change some things here. And two, I would want someone to go around and see where all of the missing bricks and sidewalk pieces are, because it is a hazard for our elderly, it is a hazard for women who are pregnant, it is a hazard for anyone who is not looking down at their feet and is looking at their cell phones.
I'd look to have hearings on civic engagement and aging in community. I think that civic engagement affects so many things that we all would like to work on. We need the help of strong neighborhoods to really get there. And we need the support of residents to do that. Aging in community, it's our largest growing population is the adult population. We just renamed Elderly Commission to Age Strong, but that's all that's been done. We need some serious planning.
Yep, so my first thing would be to correct the formula for average median income in the city immediately. And the second would be to get a response back to every single person that's ever filed a 311 request and have never heard back from this city.
You're going to be very, very, very busy.
Computers can help.
Data guys. Data guys. Okay.
My first thing would, we're in the middle of an epidemic of a crisis. That crisis being whether it's alcohol, whether it's cocaine, whether it's heroin. The very first thing I'd plan to do would be to pull the full council together, and we need a plan today, not tomorrow. We are in the tail end of this epidemic, and we cannot go another day. We can't wait for the bridge to be built along Island. We need a plan now, not tomorrow. That's number one. Number two, it would be I am a complete advocate for every neighborhood school. We're in the middle of Build BPS, and we need to be able to come back with day two, being able to tell the people that would send me from this district to city council that this is our plan, this is where the schools need to be.
The first thing I'd focus on would be a plan for public land, how we're going to use our public assets in the city to serve some of our critical needs. So whether this is affordable housing and like community control of that, thinking about in Build BPS what we're going to do with buildings that we're going to change in uses. I just think that's something where we have to keep our eye on the ball in a holistic way. And what tends to happen is that we just have hearings like one by one as these properties have dispositions. And one of the things I've learned at the Housing Authority is how important it is for us to have a strategic plan on that. So that would be a focus. The second thing is I was the budget director for Councilor Anissa Sabi George in 2016, and I feel like I should give the administration a heads up that when I'm a city councilor, I'm going to be asking for the budget information in Excel rather than PDF form. So that's something that I think it's only courteous to say in January, since the process for that starts in April. So that'd be number two.
All right, I would like each of you, with a minute, to think about and tell us one thing you've accomplished that demonstrates how you will be able to get things done as a city councilor. So something you've actually done, accomplished yourself in your lifetime, that shows how, as a city councilor, you will be able to get things done. I'll take you in any order, whoever feels moved to speak first, like the Quakers here.
I believe my experience as a prosecutor gives me a very unique experience in this way. As someone who has tried murder cases in our city, putting these cases together from start to finish is a situation that requires dedication and work, and it takes almost a 24-hour grind to be able to prove those, and to be able, the limited ones we're able to solve, but the ones that we are being able to prove them and being able to try them are goals that we're able to do so in a holistic approach. Win, lose, or draw, you're able to have families that are updated completely and a case that is presented effectively.
I'll go. I think the first win is I've been able to survive in Boston for 10 years and actually still afford the rent down the street. But in all seriousness, it's my career track record employing people, a diverse group of people, seeing results, generating growth strategies that don't just incrementally 2% each time. It's how do we jump 10x per time period to actually keep with the times and how fast businesses, cities, neighborhoods grow. So I've proven that in the private sector, and I'm ready to prove that in the public sector.
Jennifer?
So as a mom of 3 daughters, I know what it's like to raise a family in the city. As the daughter of a first generation coming from an immigrant family, I watched my mom own her first home at 60 years old. As a sister of a brother who died of a drug overdose when he was 26, I understand those challenges. As a homeowner, I know what it's like to have to pay those bills every month, how to live within a budget. I've run small nonprofits before. I've sat on boards before. I get the budgeting process. I know what it's like to have to live within your means, and that's one of the things. Those are the things I think that would make me a great city councilor.
I've always stood up when it matters. I've had issues in my local neighborhood that my neighbors had recognized as well that had to do with a small group called the Fenway Sports Group, that's Fenway Park, when they started to overprogram their space. And that may seem like a simple thing, they're just trying to get more dollars and get more folks in the seats, but there are side effects. There are more Airbnbs that affects affordable housing in our neighborhood. There's more traffic, we can't get emergency vehicles through. The list goes on and on. I approached our elected officials, got no help, approached other community leaders. Unfortunately, the Red Sox own the Boston Globe, but that didn't stop us. We formed a neighborhood group, and we went to City Hall, went to hearings, and I think it's important that you have somebody in Boston City Council who supports neighborhood groups, makes them stronger, and makes sure that people do the right thing.
I'm going to tell you a very short story. This happened to me recently, but it's so illustrative of what I stand for. The other day I was knocking doors, and I came to a door of somebody who the first time I had knocked on his door had yelled at me to go away and just leave my stuff in the hall. So I knock on it again, I ring the buzzer, and the door opens, and his little hand is sticking out, but he's not quite opening the door to me yet. What do you want? I said, I'm Helene, I'm running for Boston City Council. And he goes, huh? I'm Republican. And I said, well, it's a nonpartisan race. And he goes, how do you feel about Trump? I said, I don't know, you tell me, how do you feel about Trump? And so he starts talking to me for the next several minutes, espousing all kinds of Fox Newsy kind of things. And I kept asking questions, because with the mediation background, if somebody's meh on me, I'm probably somewhat meh back. But if they're like virulently anti-me, I'm super curious and I want to dig in. And I dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and it turns out that a lot of his anti-immigration feelings come from the fact that he is a 70-year-old veteran, and he's worried that he is not getting the support and services that he needs, and that other people are getting them. And so I brought it back to local government. I said, I completely agree that you're being underserved, and you should get those resources. Separate from immigration, you deserve that. So he starts, getting a little bit more friendly, and then he says all of a sudden, and how do you feel about them gays? I said, I don't know, you tell me, how do you feel about that gays? And I'm talking to like a door and a hand right now up a stairwell. And he starts, all the DAMNN politicians chased him out in the 80s. And I said, I don't know about that, but how do you feel? And he tells me. And I said, well, actually, sir, and I'm talking to the hand, I'm a married lesbian. And he goes, you are? And I said, yeah. He said, hang on, I'm going to put on some pants. And so he does, and he comes out, and I'm going to call him Jerry to protect his privacy. And he spends the next 5 minutes coming out to me. He is an incredibly closeted gay veteran, and he says how all of his friends say the F-A-G-S word around him all the time. He can't tell any of them who he is. And I got him, and he kept telling me, he said, I don't know why I'm coming out to you. I don't tell anybody this. And he said, it's because you listened, and we connected. And do you know what? 30 seconds later, I got his vote and his support. And the reason I tell that story, it's about listening first. If I had showed up and just tried to shove my liberal agenda down his throat, he would have stopped. But I listened, I figured out what mattered most deeply, and I realized that we were able to align on a lot of issues. So listening is what I would bring to City Council.
I think about the Community Preservation Act because I think it's an example of how you need your city councilor to be able to do a whole lot of different things. So that was a campaign where, yes, we talked to politicians about putting this thing on the ballot. And then we built coalitions across the city and also across issue areas because it was bringing funding for affordable housing and parks and historic preservation. So there was a lot of mediation in that process and a lot of building of relationships that hadn't existed before, which I think is really important. Then a lot of sweat equity, a lot of knocking, a lot of talking to our neighbors. And then when we actually passed it, then there's implementation. So I was the person who drafted the ordinance that actually brought it into effect. And then as soon as we're done at the city level, turn around and go to now chairman, but he wasn't yet, Aaron Michaelowicz's office and say, okay, we've gotten this thing on the city level, now we need you to raise the state match, because otherwise we're not going to get as much money as we want. And finally, 2 years later, that raise is actually in both the House and Senate budget. So I think that's an example of the kinds of things that you need your city councilor to do, to work with the state, to work with other elections, but most importantly, to build relationships, build coalitions in the district, talk to people, and sort of be a problem solver and go all 10 steps of the way to getting a great result.
Okay, we are up to closing statement. So we're going to give you a minute 15. How's that? For you, and I'm going to use one of these random lists. And Jennifer, you're first on the list. And so these are closing statements, however you would like to use them.
Great, thank you. Thank you everyone for being here tonight. Thank you for being so gracious and even laughing sometimes at me. Hopefully that's a good thing and not a bad thing. And again, thank you, President McKenna. So I really want to be your city councilor because I want to take all of your interests. My first job out of college was working for a state senator. And I went to graduate school at night. My second job that I went to law school at night doing was working in a county legislature. I listened to people say, I've got chickens running around my neighbor's backyard, how are you gonna get them out? I listened to people saying, my neighbor is sitting outside in the car with a man. Is she okay? Yeah, she's fine. She just got divorced. And so I understand what it's like in legislative constituent services. I understand that we need to all talk. There's no opinion that's right or wrong. There's no issue that's too small or too big. This is all of our city, and every single one of us has an issue that's super important to us. And whether you're in Beacon Hill and it's the dog poop, or you're over in Mission Hill and it's the needles, they are all important issues. And at the end of the day, I am looking for more people to want to stay in the city, to build their families in the city, and to make the city even better than it is today. Thank you all so much. My name is Jennifer Nassour, and I hope to get your vote on September 24th.
And now you can clap. Langdon, you're next on the list.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys. This has been an awesome event. Thank you, Margaret. It's my opinion, and maybe share with others, but the last thing City Council needs is someone who's made a career off of City Council. We need our council to think differently, think bigger, and solve problems. Outdated systems and manual administrative resources should not be an increased cost year over year. The population of Boston is going to continue to grow, but it's our municipal government that is supposed to grow with it and not automatically go to penalizing the people who've already lived here. It's the rich culture and diversity that inspired me to choose Boston as my home, but it's the red tape, it's the lack of accountability for our issues that inspired me to go to City Hall and get things done and make a change. I look forward to meeting every single person in this room, showing you that a real working voice in City Hall will get things done, and so we won't be talking about these same issues 2 years from now. My name is Langdon Lemoine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My name is Montez Haywood, and I'm running to be your next District 8 City Councilor. Why? Why me? I would ask you choose me for this reason. I will be a fervent constituent service person for you. And the reason that is, you will be able to get me on email, cell phone. I will work around the clock to make sure your issues are addressed. How do we know this and why? Those are the things you should be asking. I would ask you to look at my career body of work as a professional. As a professional, being a prosecutor now for the past 13 and a half years, I've done just those sorts of things where I'm working with victims, witnesses, survivors of violence, In addition to that, I'm also at faculty at Harvard where I'm teaching at the Trial Advocacy Workshop. What that is a pure teaching moment to where you teach third-year law students how to try a case. In addition, I've spent a ton of time in the community already. I'm already in the community helping to work on food security issues for our homeless, doing so, obviously, with Oasis Coalition, doing so with St. E's, doing so across our city. In addition, I was also a member of Project Right. Now, Project Right is a community-based organization where their whole goal has been economic stability of the inner city. And with that, my name is Montez Haywood. I look forward to earning your vote. Thank you.
So, like I said, I never in a million years thought I was going to run for city council, and I'm going to be honest, I'm so appreciative of all of these folks here. Running is really hard, both in terms of sweat equity and just the pressure of sitting up here with all of your eyeballs looking at us. The reason that I'm doing it is the stories that I hear every day. I can't pretend to have lived in your shoes and your life experience, but I can promise that I will listen first to understand what matters to you. I am running because of Mary, who is about this tall, 84 years old, and runs to Starbucks, walks to Starbucks every day, and can't get over the curbs because they're 8 inches tall and too high for her, and she calls them tiny walls because she has to walk all the way around. Nobody's thinking about her. I'm running because of somebody that we're going to call Tom, who is a victim of the opiate crisis and has actually been addicted to substances for the last 30 years. And I met him in subsidized housing, and he's able to put his life back together because he's got a shot with the subsidized housing. And I'm going to be thinking about Cheryl, who wants to send her kids to public school and has actually no other option, but is concerned about what's going to happen in the summer when she has to work 12-hour shifts and they're going to be out in the streets. For all of those reasons, for all of those folks, and for all of the stories that you've told me and that you're yet to tell me, I am running for city council. I hope to represent your voice, what matters to you, and I will be out there every day of this campaign and every day once I'm elected. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Helene, it's pronounced Ellen, and I look forward to earning your vote.
Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to everyone for being here. I do want to ask for your vote on September 24th. I'm Kenzie Bach. And if you're a member of the Ward 5 Democrats, I want to ask for your vote and your endorsement tonight. I want to end this debate by telling you why I'm running for local office. When I was 21, I mentioned I taught civics in the Boston Public Schools every year. And just as I finished for the summer, I actually had a White House internship. It was this dream. I went down to DC, and the day I started the internship, I got a call saying that one of my 14-year-old civics students had been shot and killed in front of his house. And I felt so helpless. I felt like I've been teaching Nicholas how to be an engaged student when he turns 18, and he's not going to make it there. And here I am at the supposed center of power in the world, and the best we can do is send a condolence card to the school and the family signed by the president. Here we are in this hub of power, and yet we're helpless. And I made a promise to myself that, because I felt like I should have been working at urban summer camps that summer with my friends up in Boston, not down there, I made a promise that I was never going to feel like I was too far away to be part of solving the challenges that face the city that I love. And so for me, that's been what has brought me home, what has had me working on local issues, and what has me asking to be your city councilor. I think that that I can give every minute of my day to tackling these challenges we face, and I ask for your vote.
Just wanted to thank everybody. There are so many hosts who put on tonight, as well as the audience. The questions have been great. The commitment to our community is so important. And want to thank all the candidates who are up here, as well as Margaret McKenna. She did a fantastic job moderating. Tonight's conversation is so important to the success of our city and our district. The run for this seat for me has never been about politics. It's been about community. It's been about strengthening the fabric of our community that I see over the last 20 years or so kind of coming a bit apart. We need increased civic engagement. We need folks on the ground understanding what our neighbors are like, why we should be fighting for each other on the same issues that we really are all concerned about. My mother grew up in Mission Hill, and my grandmother was there until she was 98, just 5 years ago. And it's so important for equity to be across the city and to have that care of your family and neighbors and that tight-knit community. I believe that we really need a new approach to city council. We need the perspective of someone who's really experienced the ups and downs and all arounds and the trying to figure out where you're going to rent your next apartment and how to navigate potentially owning your own property. And we need to give people hope that they can all do that. As I mentioned, I have a lot of executive level experience. I've worked in a number of industries, from startups to architecture and engineering to media, and I can bring that new perspective to city council. As I mentioned before, I stand up when it matters, not when it's easy and convenient. It's really important that you get a city councilor who's willing to do that. As I mentioned before, I've been out in the neighborhoods. That's what I do, and I promise you that's what I'll keep doing. That's the best measure, is what someone's done before is what they'll continue to do in the future. I am the candidate that's going to bring the power back to your neighborhood, and I'm going to bring those resources to your front door. I believe that we need to work together really to improve this city, and that's the only way that we're really going to make progress. I respectfully ask for your support tonight, also on September 24th, and I hope on November 5th as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, that ends the evening. I have a couple of announcements. Ward 5 committee is meeting right after this for an endorsement meeting.